that set off. Yeah, we're not going to be. Anyway, I got two very distinguished and respected former lieutenants here in North Las Vegas that are joining me in studio right now, and I wanted to get them in for a number of different reasons, as I alluded to before. Las Vegas, city of North Las Vegas, refusing to pay for injured police officers. This is unbelievable. It's the first time I even heard about this. Joining me right now in studio, Leonard Cardinal and Will Crespo. They are retired North Las Vegas police lieutenants with a plethora of experience. Gentlemen, I do appreciate both of you being here. How are you?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for being here. So before I get to this topic, give me a little bit about your experience. You were a lieutenant and you were a police officer, 25 years. Do I have that right?
Yes.
25 years of service. Wow, that's a long time. And yourself, how long have you been, were you an officer?
25 years. I retired as a police lieutenant.
Wow, so both of you combined 50 years of policing. That is pretty cool. Well, thank you so much for serving as an officer. As I tell people all the time, I am pro-police. When I see police officers on the streets or in a restaurant, it happened yesterday. Thank you for what you do. I shake their hand. I'm also pro-Black Lives Matter. I'm not for the organization. I don't care about that. I'm for people who want equality. I'm also for the heroes, and the overwhelming majority of police officers, I believe, are heroes that risk their life every day. So do you guys agree with me on that, that you can be both, right? Yes. Why is it you think we're so, I guess I'm getting into a national topic to start. Why is it that there are so few people, whether they're in the media, on the radio, in general, that can't say that? I'm pro-police and I'm pro-Black Lives Matter.
A lot of times the people in minority have the loudest voices. They cause the most problems. And they had a lot of, demonstrations, and they marched, and it got violent. So, yeah, it got a lot of attention. But I think the majority of the men and women that work in policing each and every day, they go to their job. They want to do the best they can. They want to help people. They want to protect people. Yeah. The greater majority of the police are those kinds of people. And you have a bad apple here and there. And there's certain people that decide to make not to water down what actually happens in bad situations, but that is not the greater majority of police. It's not an easy job. It's relentless. Will Crespo and I were there for 25 years.
Right.
And when you think about how many days in a row we put the uniform on, it's in the thousands.
Saying that it is a difficult job would be an understatement. I have a lot of respect for, law enforcement, but I have to ask you this question. I mean, obviously it was a huge story and people still talk about it. What went through both of your minds when you saw the video for the first time of what happened to George Floyd? What went through your mind when you saw that? Will, I'll start with you. Go ahead.
Obviously, we've had many. I've experienced many situations similar to that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
But arresting a person or taking them into custody like that, it doesn't take a lot to me, especially when you have the manpower. Just grab them, pick them up, sit them up, take them in.
So you've had situations, Will, in your 25-year career, where you've seen someone, a police officer, putting a knee over someone's neck.
No, I didn't see that. No.
You didn't see that.
So when I've had
officers take them down and put them on their stomach.
Right.
And then we've been trained to know that things can happen, they can asphyxiate. So we, in our practice, when I was working, we, as soon as we could, which was almost immediately, once we got them into handcuffs, we got them off their stomach.
And those officers obviously didn't do that because he was in handcuffs.
Exactly.
Do you agree with the judgment of the jury that was murder, that Derek Chauvin, not the other officers, but Derek Chauvin committed murder? Do you believe Derek Chauvin's a murderer?
The jury got it right.
I believe that jury got it right. I've literally, as a sergeant, had to pull people off the pile.
Really?
That's a true story.
Wow.
Because the adrenaline's pumping and they're in a big fight. And I've actually stepped in the middle of dog piles and told the officers enough, in handcuffs, on the ground. And on one occasion, I did have to grab one by the collar and pull him back off the pile.
You know, it's interesting because me being a white person, as you can see, I'm extremely white. And black people don't want to hear me say this, and I understand that. But I always try to say, even if you think you're dealing with a cop that's a bad cop, that's a dirty cop, maybe even racist, the worst thing you can do is not comply. And I feel like, especially millennials today, they don't want to comply. And that can escalate things, and you're giving an officer an opportunity, if you think he's a bad or she is a bad cop, to pull a trigger. But I look at, a lot of these situations, not all, but a lot of these situations, and it starts with non-compliance. Am I wrong in making that assumption?
Yes, you are.
I am. Oh,
yes,
okay.
And I'm going to tell you why. At the end of the day, we're professionals.
Right.
So we don't get afforded the opportunity to say, well, since you didn't comply, it's okay for me to.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just
Well-
saying that it escalates, and it wouldn't escalate if people
But
complied.
it's still escalating. You still have to stay within your use of force,
Sure,
what you've
sure.
been trained. Stay within the law. You're required to do that. You're a professional.
I
So
would
if
say
it
it
does
doesn't-
escalate to that, escalate, you still have boundaries
Sure.
in that
It doesn't
escalation.
start with non-compliance because the
Interesting.
greater majority of people in my career have been non-compliant. They're upset, they're drunk, you're in their house, you pull them over, and they don't want to comply. What I found is that if you just take a moment to explain to them, we had a huge fight at a convenience store once. A guy had never been arrested. He was a law-abiding citizen. He got into a fight, and at the end, I asked him why he fought the officers, and he said, "I just wanted to know what they were stopping me for." I was in the store. They kept telling me to come outside. If they would have just told
and
me,
they didn't tell them. Yeah.
right? So
That's
an
interesting.
example of
It's your job to be professional
Yes.
and make sure that things don't escalate. If somebody runs from you, you don't
Exactly.
shoot them. You don't
Exactly.
go crazy, right? Even car chases today. So
Exactly.
I understand what you guys are saying, and you make a good
yeah,
point.
right?
Yeah.
And that, because it's easy to have excuses or make excuses for certain use of forces,
Right.
but at the end of the day, we have to be at that higher level of professionalism, and that's what we get the training for. And the responsibility that's given to us by the general public,
Right.
and the country as a whole, is large, and we have to temper that. We have to temper that authority. It has to be tempered, and there's no excuse for going excessive.
Did
There's
Paul
no
make a
excuse for
comment
it.
about the George
Sure.
Floyd? Because
Sure.
here was one of the issues that I noticed. George Chauvin had been in trouble many
Derek
times.
Chauvin. Yep. Yep.
Other people died, I believe, in a
Correct.
chase or something
Correct.
like that.
He was
Okay.
written up many a times.
So I
Yeah.
think what you're asking is some of the where the problem comes from, the root of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if he had been in trouble and disciplined 15, 16, 18 times,
Right.
okay,
That's an issue.
because of whoever he was close with or whatever his relationship
Good
was,
point.
and they moved him and buried him. But that's
There
on
needs
the
to be a little bit
administration.
more. I agree. There needs to be a little bit more accountability if an officer does do something wrong. What would you say about those other 3 officers that were there, though? Because they're all going to be spending time in jail.
Well, when you asked the question in the beginning,
Yeah.
that's the first thing I was going to say is
Yeah.
they should not have stood there. And if I were there, if I were on scene, I would have asked him to get off. And if he didn't, I would have had to pull him up, because you're saving someone's life. And the other police would get mad at me and they would be like, "Why did you get involved?" or whatever. But I can live with that. I'm tough enough. where
Yeah,
can live with
I
that.
tend to agree with you. By the way, if you're just joining us, we're joined in studio by 2 officers, retired, spent 50 years in North Las Vegas. So certainly a lot of respect to them. We'll get to. I want to talk obviously about the city of North Las Vegas refusing to pay injured officers. We'll get to that, but I wanted to start by just talking about some of the national topics. And by the way, this is local, and I want to share this with you. It's a touchy, horrible subject of a local police officer recently who was just shot and killed. I had his girlfriend in studio. It was a very difficult interview, and I would imagine when you lose an officer, a fallen officer, it has to hit home for you guys, right? It's horrible. It's a terrible tragedy. And here's an officer who had been on the force here in Las Vegas for a very long time, a good cop, trying to de-escalate a situation. What did you make of that whole situation? Did he make any mistakes, too? And I hate to say it like that because he was the victim, but I mean, what did you make of that whole situation?
I don't know the details, but I can tell you I read an article a short time ago about a sergeant who'd been on a very long time approaching a house in a rural area
Yeah.
and got shot from the second floor with a hunting rifle in the chest and died. So he went on a domestic, on a disturbance, the most dangerous call. And I don't know the details, but
This was also domestic.
and
Yeah.
that's kind of our point. That's why we're here today to talk about Will Crespo, because
Yeah.
they won't pay his claim. They refuse to, even though a judge ordered them to. But why don't they have any respect for what he's done? Why do these people have no respect? Because you can get killed in an instant.
Well, let's talk about that then, because this is a story that I was, and we'll get to some of the other topics later then. This was a topic that I was unaware of. Obviously, if you're a decent human being, you would say if an officer is injured in any way, shape, or form, they need to be taken care of, whether that be financially getting the health care that they deserve. I would say that about our members of our military as well, which I am very unhappy with in this country because we do not treat our veterans like we should. So tell me about this story coming out of the city of North Las Vegas, right? Tell me what is going on. And what are your grievances with officers not being treated fairly, injured officers?
My grievance is that there are laws that have been put in place that give us these benefits. We didn't make them up. We didn't just out of nowhere grab something out of the air and say, okay, we should be getting this. These are actual laws that have been passed that say if you've been injured, especially for me, specifically for me, the heart and lung bill has to do with, for police and fire and some first responders, where if you acquire lung disease or heart disease, is automatically attributed to the job. Of course, they put roadblocks in the way to try to figure out ways to not have to honor those, the law, or honor those benefits that you've earned by trying to justify or.
How do you get lung disease from being a cop? Explain that to me.
Well, you could. We've been in situations where there are chemicals around there.
So it's a case by case
by case basis.
Fair enough.
It could happen. It could happen to
It's
officers.
less likely lungs.
Right.
Than
But I can see heart disease. The stress of the job is
Right.
is it's unbearable. I couldn't do it. I don't know how you guys were able to do it, but
It affects everyone differently, and everyone handles it differently. And some people get other diseases. Like they get substance abuse and diabetes and PTSD. So a lot of things come from it. But in this specific situation, there's actually a law, the Heart and Lung Bill, which basically says if you develop heart disease, in my case, is automatically attributed to the job, and there's certain benefits that come with it. They take care of you medically, your heart. They cover your heart, anything associated with that. Plus, in my case, which is unique, a bill was passed in 2015 that limited who can get the monetary portion of it after you're retired. So you had to have, in 2015, when the law was passed, you had to have at least 20 years on at the time the law was passed in 2015. Well, I had 25 years on.
when did you start to develop this? Was it when you were a cop or after when you?
They
returned?
never found it. We do annual physicals.
This is a difficult thing, right? Because
It
I
has
want
to-
you.
Can I draw? It
Yeah.
has to be while you're employed.
Okay.
If it's pre-existing and there's proof that it's pre-existing, then you probably.
This is a difficult thing to prove. I want you to be taken care of. Your service to if you're a good cop, and I would imagine both of you guys are and were, and you both of you have 50 years of experience. I want you to be taken care of. But I also understand if somebody would say, well, how can we prove that this man developed heart disease because of being a police officer, right? So that's just a question that pops up in my head. I want you to be taken care of. You deserve it. Your service to the community, absolutely. But then how do we prove that you developed heart disease?
Well, how about this? How about he has 2 stents in his heart?
I understand.
How
Yeah,
about,
he told me
how
that.
about
yeah.
a signed letter from a doctor saying that he's permanently totally disabled,
Right.
and has coronary artery disease? So how about the fact that a judge agreed and ordered them to pay them, and they still refused to
But
pay?
before that, and I agree with you. How do you know? How do you just? That's when I had to go see a doctor
Right.
who was sent 1,500 pages of my medical history, and he basically had to come to the conclusion and determine, based on everything that he was sent from the city itself, on all my prior annual physicals, and interviewing me and doing his investigation, he determined that the causation of my heart disease was work related. So it was determined. And
I'm
an
playing
investigation
devil's.
no, you're fine.
Yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate
Yes,
here, which is what I'm
it-
doing. I want you. You guys seem like great guys.
right.
I want you to be taken care of. I'm not saying I don't.
No, I know you don't.
What would you say to somebody who would say, "Well, wait a second. You knew what you were getting into. Very dangerous job. Extremely stressful.
Right.
You knew what you were signing up for. Why now do you want to be paid for? I'm
This is
playing
not an
devil-
overreach. This
Yeah.
is the law. The law says.
But when I signed
We
up,
didn't create the law. The law says if you're a cop or a fireman, you have a heart or lung disease,
Right.
it's a legal presumption that it's because you
But
were
let's be
police
clear, though.
or-
If you're shot on the job or you're injured on the job, there is no question you're going to be taken care of, right? We're talking about, like you said, lung disease, heart disease,
Right.
and I think any logical person, I'd like to think of myself as logical, would believe an extremely stressful job. I can't think of a more stressful job than a police officer.
that's what's
It's going to take a toll on your body, right?
right, and that's what's causing the coronary artery disease, the stress, the life endangering situation.
So you take this to court.
not only is the job dangerous,
Right.
but then you get in situations where there's situations that can get you killed, life endangering situations. That's what I'm looking for. So we know those are coming, and those are possibilities. So when you get in those situations, when you get shot at, you could potentially lose your life in those situations.
Sure.
Can you imagine the stress at those times?
Oh, even
on
if-
top of
if
your
You're not
normal
hypervigilant
question.
all the time, but when you're on duty, you're hypervigilant.
So explain this to me. You develop this heart disease. You have these 2 stints. I'm glad you look like you're someone that's in incredible shape. It's not like, see, I think it'd be different, and I think you both will agree with me on this. You're in good shape when you're a cop, and then you retire, and in 2 or 3 years, you gain 200 pounds, right? That's different.
Right.
It's not the case with you, right?
Right.
That's why I say,
and that's why it can't be attributed
Right.
to my diet or my lack of trying.
What
to
if somebody
do the
said
right
to you,
things.
your family has a history of heart disease. Maybe it had nothing to do with being a cop. I'm just thinking in my head what the excuses could be to
The
not
law-
pay you.
The law doesn't allow for that.
It doesn't.
It does not allow for that. And in Will Crespo's case, if you don't mind me saying so, they actually questioned his fitness habits. So he provided.
Look at you. I mean, you look like the Incredible
it gets
Hulk over
better.
here.
He provided 7 or 8 years
Yeah.
of visits to the gym.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
There is a
So-
fine line. I'm picturing an officer that weighs 500 pounds and has heart disease. I'm thinking, well, you didn't take care of yourself,
There
right?
you
That's
go.
different.
There-
I'm looking at you, and you're
Right.
extremely physical. Your arms are like the size of my entire body. You know, you take care of yourself. You
Thank you.
obviously work out and stuff, and that's why I say this has to be okay. So let's review.
So that goes to it has
Gotcha.
to be with the job.
Of course.
Exactly.
Of course. I
Right.
understand that.
Right.
So tell me what happened here. You develop heart disease. You have these 2 stents. You have to file a claim with the North Las Vegas Police Department,
The
right?
workers'
in
comp claim.
2019.
You
right?
file a claim. You're already retired, right?
Yes.
You had been retired for 2 years, correct?
I've been retired for 4 years.
Okay,
when it
4
happened.
years. So what happens next?
2019.
You file it. It goes to court. You just said a judge agrees that you should. So
Well,
what
the-
happens
the-
here?
Well, the games start immediately.
Yeah.
They deny the claim. He appeals. The NRS says on a heart and lung claim, if you're denied that and it's not adjudicated within 6 months, it's in NRS, I think it's 657. I can look it up. It says that if it's not adjudicated in 6 months on appeal, that the Division of Industrial Relations has to investigate it. The state has to investigate why it's taking. This is 3 years later. Okay, so all they do is employ stall tactics. They deny, they deny, they deny. They say, let the process play out. Will was patient enough to let the process play out. A judge said, I hereby order you to pay this claim. That's my final decision. And she was nice enough to write out her reasoning because in 2015, they added a section 14 to the NRS that says you can only get medical benefits from now on. But there was an exception. However, if you have your 20 years in before the signing of this bill, then you will you receive the full package. So they already presented their argument,
Right.
and they lost. And now they're just asking for a motion to stay, and
So they haven't paid you anything to this point.
No.
Andy hasn't worked.
And how many years has this gone on for?
Over 3 years now.
3 years, and you haven't received $1. How is your health right now?
As good as it can be, I guess.
Are you able to exercise and run and with 2 stints? I don't know what.
It's limited.
Yeah.
It's definitely limited since I noticed how it's different. You know, even trying to spend time with my daughter, any kind of physical activity. Even now, I can feel like I lose my breath a little bit.
Are there a lot of
So
other
it just
officers that
happens.
are dealing with? Have you spoken to other officers that are dealing with what you're dealing with?
Yes.
How many you think in North Vegas alone?
Well, we had a sergeant who retired a few years ago who ran 6 miles a day and was as skinny as a rail, and he passed away in Utah in his cabin from a heart attack sitting on the couch. That's a true story.
That's terrible.
Another lieutenant retired shortly after I did, and he was into jujitsu.
Is
and
this how they do things though, like in other precincts in the state of Nevada, or is this just a North Las
This is
Vegas
all of
thing?
Nevada. North Las Vegas is the worst, but this is all of Nevada. It's all shut down. It's a big conglomerate of people that just waste time and waste time and waste time. And we give up our right to sue the insurer in the state of
You know,
Nevada.
These are big issues. You know, I've had Kevin McMahill in here before, and we talked about the mental issues that police officers have, and this is the part that I really don't understand. And you know, you could be a police officer on the streets and see some of the worst things you've ever seen. You know, maybe, God forbid, a young girl gets raped and you have to talk to her. Or maybe you see the last moments of somebody's life. Maybe it could be a car accident or a robbery, whatever. And then after that incident, and after you write your report, whatever, then you have to just go back on duty. And I'm thinking to myself, you need to talk to somebody. You shouldn't be working the rest of the day. You should be getting help and talking to somebody. Even if you're able to deal with it, you still should be. And I talked to Kevin about that, and he's going to try to do something about that. I just feel like that is absurd. When you see things that a human being should not see, whether it be body parts and that's not normal. Human beings shouldn't have to see that every day. And when you see something like that, I don't want that police officer on patrol right after that, because I think that's harmful to you, and it's harmful to the citizens too. You're not in the right frame of mind. Do you agree with me that something needs to be done about that?
I don't know what could be done. I mean, you have to have a certain kind of personality. You need to compartmentalize your emotions and your mental state. I've gone from I walked in the house as someone was committing suicide. I've helped fire department pull children out of pools, and then the next call could be an elderly lady who's arguing with her neighbor because the water sprinkler is going on her driveway instead of his driveway. And then after that, you might have a barricade after that. So you have to be cut out for it. You really do. If you're not cut out for it, it can be
But
very
even if you are quote unquote cut out for it, you still need to talk to somebody, in my personal opinion. I think it should be mandatory.
I think the problem that comes with that is just like in the military, I guess, and when you're in there and you report something or you want to report it, what comes with that? There's a
Right.
stigma to that. So now you go out and it may make you appear weaker, or you may even get targeted because now you may become a liability to the department because now they see that you're saying you have some issues or some mental issues.
Right,
So
right.
it could be turned
Could
around
cost you
against
your career right
It could
there.
cost you your career.
So we talk about
So how do
this-
you have someone come out and
It's
say
very
okay,
difficult. This is a very difficult issue, but I want officers to get all the help that they need in order to perform their job at a high level. You guys have a high stress job, life and death in seconds sometimes, where you have to make decisions. I wanted to ask you this, speaking of the stresses of the job, have both of you ever fired your weapon? 25 years, both of you. Have you guys ever had to fire your weapon?
I only had to fire once.
did?
I was dog was coming at me, but I didn't hit the dog.
Right.
When I fired, it went to like the left side of the dog and it went into the ground.
Absolutely understandable.
And a Rottweiler, he was a big Rottweiler too.
Yeah.
But he took off running, and that was enough
Sure,
to keep him
sure.
from attacking me. But I didn't hit him. But that's the only time.
Obviously, you've had to take your gun out multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
Every night.
Every night.
Multiple
Every night.
times.
Almost
every night, multiple times.
That is
every
unbelievable,
single
because
night.
you only take your gun out when you feel like there could be a
Well, no. Well, let me
Yeah.
explain. We do a lot of burglaries where the door's kicked in, the
Right.
family gets home.
It's
we have
protecting
to clear. We have to clear
yourself
the
and
house.
others. Right, right,
We have to clear the house. When you clear
Understood.
the house, you pull a gun. If you show up to a barricade or somebody's inside who's
Yeah.
shooting at the family, your gun has to be out. If you
Isn't it true though, when you pull somebody over, you're supposed to have your hand on your gun? Don't
No,
they
that's
train?
not true.
They don't
No.
do that. Okay,
No,
because
that's
I've
not
seen
true.
some officers do that.
sometimes they train them that way, but
Yeah.
I think through experience you learn to relax. You learn that
Right.
if you get wound up, you'll get the person wound up.
So Leonard, did you,
we're not trained to have our weapon.
Of course, of course.
But you have to evaluate the entire situation.
it's pretty incredible though. 25 years you were serving as an officer and you never had to fire your weapon. That's a good thing. Leonard, same question.
No, I have not, but I began to squeeze the trigger on a couple of occasions.
Wow, you were close.
I was
what was the closest time where you felt like, wow, I could have just been killed?
I was
Like,
in a foot pursuit, and it was a robbery suspect who had just committed a robbery with a gun.
Right.
And I was chasing him through the yards. It was by Balzar and Comstock in North Las Vegas. And as I was chasing him, I was only maybe 10 feet behind, and I had my gun out because I had a weird feeling. And he reached with his right hand for his waist, and I saw the gun start to come out. And,
Oh my God.
And as
So when
his-
he's reaching for something right there, you are in the right. You can shoot him.
probably could have, probably.
You are in the right.
Yeah, I started.
When someone is saying,
Well, I
put your
saw the
hands
gun.
up, stop, and you see somebody reach, that is reasonable. Reasonably, an officer can take out a gun and shoot somebody for that, right?
I ended up seeing the gun in his right hand, and he was actually flinging it. He was throwing it.
Oh, he's throwing it away.
So as it came
Pretty
around
stupid, though.
above his shoulder, I saw him throw it. But at that point, when I saw the gun, I started to press on the trigger, and that's
and if he
pretty
doesn't
close.
throw it, and if he turns around, he's dead. You're going to shoot him.
As far as scary situations, I don't think. I think we experience a little bit of fear after the situation, because if you hesitate, if you have to go in a house and the husband's shooting up the house and somebody's shot and you have to go in, you don't really have time to think about. You just
What do you
kinda
think is
go.
we talked about this earlier, the hardest calls that you guys have to face?
Children.
Domestic violence, children? Yeah.
For me, without a doubt,
Children,
children. I've had some stuff that just was very difficult to get over.
I had a situation where the kid was maybe 1 or 2, and the sister left the child with his aunt who had some mental issues. And when we got the call and we were looking for the child who was still in diapers, he was holding a baby bottle to his mouth. His whole entire head was covered with blood, and he had an extension cord wrapped around his neck. Thank God he was still alive. But when you see those things, those just stay with you, or those crib deaths, your son infant death syndromes, those can stay with you for a long time.
I listen to
Those are
these.
tough.
I listen to these stories to both of you, and I listen to you guys with combined 50 years of service to the community as law enforcement. And I say to myself, you're the types of people I want to make sure you guys are taken care of. You serve the community. You were good police officers, and you're the types of people that I want. When I talk to, if I see a police officer that's written up 25 times, not a good cop, maybe I feel differently about a police officer like that. But when I see people like you, good officers, you took your job, obviously, both of you, very seriously. You should be taken care of, and nobody should have to push you on. Oh, well, you can't prove if you got heart disease or not, whether you're a police officer or not. It shouldn't come down to that, right? This is what our tax dollars pay for. We don't just pay for police officers to work. Last I checked, we also pay for police officers to retire after.
When
a
you
certain
mention
amount of time.
tax
And-
dollars, they're literally taking the citizens' tax dollars and fighting us for 3 or 4 or 5 years, paying attorneys, paying third-party administrators, as they call it,
That's a
on
joke.
cases they know they can't win. They've already been told they can't win.
What a waste of money.
But then they have to pay at the end anyway.
What a waste of money. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. If you're just joining us, we are speaking with retired North Las Vegas police lieutenants sitting to my right here, Leonard Cardinal and Will Crespo. We were just talking about the issues that Will has had with 2 stints and health issues, and North Las Vegas will not pay him for that, which I find to